Okay, and what we want to do in this video is take a look at the next non-price determinant, the next thing or factor that causes a shift in the demand curve. And while this isn't perfect English, it's designed to fit into the whole thing of TOAS, which is the price of other related goods or other related goods prices. Now again, we're talking about demand. Don't forget the 9 central themes and the very first real issue of economics as we go through. So what we said was, look, we've done taste of the consumer, and now what we're going to come on to is other related goods prices. Now I'm not going to go through the rest, but all I'm saying is we are working off this acronym, I believe it's still called, which is TOAS, and we've done taste of the consumer, and now we're on to the O, which is other related goods prices. Now, to remind ourselves what we hopefully already know, that if one of those 6 changes in a certain way, that one of the TOAS changes in a certain way, there will be an outward shift of the demand curve. And all that means is that at every price more is bought, and this is called an increase in demand. Okay, we're not showing any prices or anything like that, but we are filling in the microeconomics rule of 11 where we can. Now, on the other hand, if one of those 6 non-price determinant change in a different way, in the opposite way than they did in the previous slide, we will have an inward shift of the demand curve. Don't forget to be labeling your demand curves: title, price, currency, origin, quantity, units per time period. And that means that at every price less is bought, and this is called a decrease in demand. Now, when we're saying other related goods, what are we talking about? Well, there are 2 types of related goods when we're talking about demand. The first type is a substitute, and the second type is a complement. Now, whether or not you know or you think you know what these things are, that's great if you do, and it's no problem if you don't, because I'm just going to define them. So a substitute are goods which can be used in place of each other. Now, the example that they give here is Adidas running shoes and Nike running shoes. That is the definition that you give when asked, or when you think you are required to yield the definition of a substitute. So what I'm going to do is just give you a few more. So something like Coke and Pepsi, or something like Daz. Maybe you have to be European or even Irish to know what this is, but Daz and Persil, they're both washing up powders. So like Coke and Pepsi, potentially, depending on your taste and preferences, doesn't have to be perfect. Pepsi is just not something I like. I like Coca-Cola. I would have a different drink other than Pepsi, but I'm just going along what most people may say. And Persil and Daz, they're both different types of washing up powders, so you can use them interchangeably. Now, your preference may be for one over the other, but that's not what we're discussing right now. Now, the next thing is complements are goods used in combination with each other. For example, digital cameras and memory cards. Now, while I would never encourage smoking, very good example of complements are cigarettes and some form of lighting equipment, be it matches or a lighter or something like that. And then petrol cars and petrol or gasoline, depending on your preference of the term. Now, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to give examples. I'm not going to say which causes what and why. I'm going to show by means of a diagram. Now, substitute goods that are goods that can be used in place of each other, right? So what we're going to say is this here is the demand for Nike, right? Nike running shoes. And there has been a rise in the price of a substitute good, and we are saying that substitute good is Adidas. Now, this is the demand curve for Nike, don't forget. So if Adidas increases their price, ceteris paribus, what is the most likely or logical action that at least some consumers will take? And I would hope that you would be of the opinion that at least some of the Adidas consumers would switch over to Nike, which means they would buy more Nike at every price, which means the demand curve for Nike would shift outwards. Now again, I am only showing it at one price, but this means that at every price more is bought, and this is an increase in the demand for Nike because Adidas raised their price. This is an increase in the demand for the good in question because there was a rise in the price of a substitute. An increased demand is caused by an outward shift of the demand curve, and it means that at every price more is bought. I hope that makes sense. Now, this again is the demand curve for Nike. Let's assume, and I know there's this thing about if the price falls, it's less desirable and all that. That's called a good of ostentation. We're not concerned about that now. Okay, so if this is the demand curve for Nike and there is a fall in the price of Adidas, what could or most likely happen, ceteris paribus? Well, at least some of the people that were buying Nike, now choose to buy Adidas because they believe these two goods to be relatively similar, of a relative equal quality. They may prefer Nike, but they just see that they'd rather the savings in money that they get from Adidas than the increase in quality that they get from Nike, in their opinion. So therefore, there is an inward shift in the demand curve for Nike following a fall in the price of Adidas. And all that's saying is there's not an outward shift in Adidas, there is a movement down the demand curve of Adidas, okay, just so you're aware. So therefore, at every price, even though I've only shown one here, there is a reduction in the demand for Nike because Adidas lowered its price. There is a reduction in the demand for the good in question following a fall in the price of a substitute good. The demand curve for the good in question, in this case Nike, has shifted inwards and to the left, and this is known as a fall or a decrease in demand, not in quantity demanded. Now that was substitute. So complements are goods that are used in joint demand. They're goods that are used together. So if you want another example, let's say, so they said memory cards and digital cameras. Let's just say like big cars and petrol. Now, however you define a big car, that's up to you. If this is the demand for big cars, what would happen to the demand for big cars if a part of the whole process, which is petrol, falls in price? Well, I would imagine that the entire cost of running, operating and driving a big car has fallen. So therefore, there would be an outward shift. And I didn't say the price, I said the cost. There is a difference. So the price of big cars has stayed the same, but the fall in the price of a complement, in this case petrol or gasoline, has caused people to be more likely to buy big cars. And as such, at every price, at every single price, even though I'm only showing one here, at every price, more big cars are purchased. So therefore, the demand for big cars, Jeeps, SUVs, so on and so forth, has increased following the fall in the price of petrol or gasoline. The demand for the good in question has increased following a fall in the price of a complement. That is an outward shift of the demand curve, an increase in demand, and this means that more is purchased at every price, even though I've only shown one here. Now, the final graph that I'll show you is a rise in the price of complementary good or a complement. Well, this is the demand curve for big cars. The price of petrol or gasoline has increased. Therefore, people are less likely not only to drive big cars, but to drive in general. Okay, so the demand for big cars in this case has shifted inwards. People are like, no, it's far too expensive to operate. The price of gasoline has risen. I'm not going to buy a big car again in the next 2 to 3 years. So therefore, what has happened is the demand curve for big cars has shifted inwards following an increase in the price of petrol. The demand curve for the good in question has shifted inwards following a rise in the price of a complement. This is an inward shift, which means less is bought at every single price, and that is called a decrease or a fall in demand, not in quantity demanded. So quantity demanded follows a movement, which is a change in price. A change in demand follows a shift, which is caused by a change in one of the 6 non-price determinants, which we use the acronym TOAS to remember. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I really hope this helps, and I very much look forward to seeing you in the next video.